Welcome back to another episode of a very British space program. We're on episode 27 and you find us in orbit, just refining the Ceres probe's flight path and doing its burns there. In this episode we're going to be looking at the end of 1962, the start of 1963. We're going to send some more crew into orbit, we're going to send some more missions interplanetary, and we're going to send something up that's a little different to what we've done before. So please join us. It is the 21st of December 1962. It's also very dark, isn't it? Yeah, we're in space and there's no sun, brilliantly. And we are following the refinement of the Ceres probe. We need to set off the Vesta probe. So this is going to depart Earth orbit and hopefully it's going to head out over towards Vesta. This is one of the ones where we're basically pushing the solar panels we have. We're pushing the tech we have right now. This is actually going to be departing at an ascending or descending node with Vesta, because Vesta is actually on a bit of an inclined orbit, and so the best place for us to do this burn is not automatically or always the best sort of easiest transfer in sort of the elliptical orbit, but is actually primarily going to be at an ascending or descending node, which means that we can actually save on all that inclination change in space around the sun. So as it fires the second of its engines off there, you can see it's very much a replica of the Ceres craft because it's the backup. And we're going to set that off there, and then we'll come back later to do a little bit of refinement, I think. Well, here we are a little bit later. We've been going for 22 days. We're in the sort of outside the sphere of influence of Earth right now. And it is about sorting out its odds, inclinations and things like that. And this just takes a little bit of time. It's just a refining. Now, one of the big things with these craft is that, it takes a bit of effort to just get it. Because we're targeting such a small planetary body, the RCS is really doing this refinement for us. So we're actually doing this, and this is the 3rd of January in 1963. The clock on the top there says 22 days, but remember this craft was actually in orbit for a while before we actually departed it, and so the mission clock is actually over there. It's actually only been about, I think, 12 days, so not too bad. But this is the start of 1963 already. Told you we were going to get onto it. And this is just very delicate alignments. It actually was a problem because we have not got as good an RCS setup on these craft as possible. We could have actually done with some extra RCS to give us a bit better translational control. But as it was, we're having to turn the craft and fire the RCS, and it's for a mission like this, not perfect. But anyway, let's move on. So it is the 25th of February 1963, and this is the White Javelin 3A Dawn launching again. Yes, that's right, we're reusing our little shuttlecraft. It got down, we refueled it, we put a new booster underneath it, and off it goes. And this one's going to spend a few days in orbit just looking at the impact of zero-G on sleep and on radiation on blood vessels, because we need to start understanding this if we're going to spend any extended periods of time outside of Earth's sort of atmosphere. They're also going to do some on-orbit maneuvers, very much like our last mission, where they're going to change their orbit after 2 days, and then they're going to spend a bit more time before coming back. The crew on this mission is a brand new team. This is new pilot Laurie Whitehead. I think this is the end of our third crew intake. So she is the final, I think, of the third crew intake. And we also have our first scientist, Marcia Seymour. So this craft is going to basically spend some time in orbit. We did have a slight problem on launch, you might have noticed, where one of the stage 1 engines may have had a slight fault, but we burned the others longer and it was fine, so not a big issue. So this craft is just going to sit in the orbit around for a while. It's going to do a little bit of orbital maneuver, playing around. It's going to check its orbital position. See there, we're just checking the RCS, things like that. I'm not going to bore you with it basically floating around in space. They both did EVAs to experience that, and they did some on-orbit maneuvers and orientation changes before it fires up its main engines again, just to bring its periaps down into the atmosphere. And there you go, it's brought itself down, spins itself around, and then we're just coming in for an atmospheric interface. And we had a slight problem with that. I'm going to be honest with you. The craft wasn't oriented correctly on atmospheric interface, primarily because of some weird glitch in reality. I may have time warped into the atmosphere. We also failed to detach the little service module at the back there, which yeah, we should have done, because it's quite explosive, which means we're carrying extra weight, and we're coming in a bit vicious because we haven't had our gradual slowdown at around 100 kilometers up. And there we go. I think, yeah, we go. That's the service module gone. Really need to try and remember to dump that in future, because it is quite explosive. So we basically work our way through atmosphere, and this was a really hot re-entry. It took a while. We did it a few skip glides, but you can see there that the heat level building up, even up at sort of 50 kilometers up, was actually quite staggering. We've not seen this with the craft, and that, I think that's all down to that first stint. We really need to look into what's actually going on with this craft, because this second flight of this craft was quite different to its first, in a way that I was a little concerned about. So we're going to have a really good look at that and see what we can do to try and improve it, and progress it, do things a little different. Was it just the angle of approach that we had? What we are doing, though, is we're going to try and come down in the Philippines. The Philippines are a wonderful World War II ally of the British. I believe at some point they were actually a colony of the British, but I can't remember. After Google check, not Google, because Google doesn't exist at this time point, does it? No. We're going to have to look in the Encyclopedia Britannica as to what was going on with the Philippines. I'm sure there's some sort of history we have there. We have them with most nations. So anyway, the 3A comes down. There is concern about this craft and that overheating, that slight explosion that we had, and the heat levels on the cockpit. So we're going to look at other opportunities. But while we do that, it is the 6th of March 1962, and we are launching yet another Red Princess 5A, this time carrying something a little new. This is carrying Puck 2. So Puck was our first ever scientific satellite, and Puck 2 is going to be a little test bed for some technology we've now got hold of. It's going to use new thermoelectric generators, which require nuclear decay to actually provide electricity and some heat. We're going to use Puck 2 as our, well, I'm not letting anything out of the bag here. We're going to use it as a rendezvous target for upcoming flights, and hopefully for some manned test flights and robotic test flights. So we're going to put it into a nice 200 kilometer orbit, hopefully. We're going to monitor the power drain. We're going to monitor the temperatures over the next few weeks and months, just to see what's going on. We're going to run this science suite at maximum rate and see how it goes, because a lot of this scientific equipment we're actually going to put on our interplanetary craft that are still ready to go out. So this thing is very much a test bed for energy tech, for scientific technology. You can see there, really interesting basic little craft. It is very much remnant of the Puck that we sent up originally, because it is got nothing. It's got no orientation control, nothing. It is just going to sit there and do some science for us. So we thought, Puck 2, this is going to be our landmark craft. If you're wondering about the nuclear material, we do have a reprocessing facility very near to Spade Adam, which we're going to be using for that. So Sellafield is going to be providing our nuclear material for these. So in a very short trip there, we don't have to rely on anybody else for this. We got lots of it. Right. Now, what are we going to actually rendezvous with that thing, though, is the question I think you're probably asking. Because we could send up the White Javelin 3A, but we've just seen its flight wasn't particularly great. We need to have a good look at it and see what's going on. It is capable of rendezvous. It has the fuel capacity. It has the maneuverability to do that. But we have a team from Avro Canada that, well, they've come up with another idea, but we need to test the system first. So let's try that, I think. It is the 29th of April 1963, and we are launching the first of a new series of craft for us. This is the White Trident 2A. Yes, I know it only has 2 engines, not 3, but it has a similar upper stage and it looks similar, so we've called it the 2 because the White Trident was a good performer for us, so we like to continue on the good quality naming brand. It makes the public like it more. So the first stage of this is 2 Tau engines, which are kerosene peroxide engines, large kerosene peroxide engines we've just finished development of. And on the upper stage there we have our standard Spectre engines, as with the White Trident 1. And on the top of that we have the Faraday X1 test payload. Yes, the X is because it is not really a payload. You can see we've removed the top sort of section there. It's got a few solid boosters there. Just removed the top cap, and you can see that little cap, that little cone shaped. I almost gave away what it is. This is what the team from Avro Canada have been working on. It's called a capsule, although this isn't actually a capsule. This is a dumb weight that we've put on, and we're basically just going to be testing with this flight the control systems, the design, the maneuverability. And I'm going to be honest with you, this is not the greatest of tests I've ever done. So what are we doing? First of all, we move away from our upper stage, and we're just going to see how the craft's maneuvering, see if it's got control. It's got, and it ain't got great control, because it seems of the I don't know how many ports we have, but we've got about 2/3 of them that are working at best. So we have lost roll control. We do not have some of our fore and aft control from the top and bottom ports. We have limited control for translation, port starboard, fore and aft, and things like that. So we're basically running with about half the directional control that I'd really like. But the mission must continue. So the mission is actually just testing out the viability of this craft, this sort of Delta V payload and whatnot, this launch craft, in actually performing rendezvous and low Earth orbit maneuvers. After we won't say debacle, but the problems that we had with the White Javelin 3, the team in Avro Canada have really been pushed forward. They've been rushed to get this out. In particular, the White Trident, because that has the ability to basically bring payloads of about three tons to orbit quite easily for us. But also this Faraday mission is very much about, can we get the crew into orbit, because we're actually starting to lag behind. Our turnaround for craft is quite slow compared to the Russians. Even the Americans are starting to move forward, and both of them are using capsules. So the Avro Canada team turned around and said, we can put a capsule together for you as a backup, and that's what's been going on for the last couple of years now. NASA did try and poach them off us earlier on, but we managed to keep hold of some of the key personnel. We'll talk about that when you see the first one actually fly, but for now it's the control systems that are important to us. So what we're actually going to try and do is we're going to try and rendezvous with Puck 2. Partly because it's a target that we can identify quite easily, and partly because we just like the historic vibe of a Puck craft being something that does our first rendezvous with. The original Puck, we're not sure about the viability of actually rendezvousing with it, because its orbit is it's not brilliant. It's not a consistent orbit. So we've gone for this Puck 2 because it has quite a nice consistent orbit. It's almost perfectly circular, so we can do this. Saying that, it would have been a lot harder with the original Puck, primarily because we do not have the RCS controls that we would really like. So here we are. We did our earlier rendezvous burn, and now we're going to come past Puck 2, reasonably close, and we really want to start firing engines now, but we're a little late. And these are not the final engine system for this craft. They're actually underpowered. We need to upgrade them a little bit. However, they do a job, and this craft is capable of catching up with its target. But you'll see there, we tumble. We have a big problem, which is because we don't have fore and aft control, we have to turn the craft to change, to really do a lot of the maneuvers. And so it looks as though we're tumbling really, really badly a lot of the time. In actual fact, that's just us trying to orientate the craft with only half the sort of directional control we really need. You can see, even if we try and sort of change the attitude of the craft, we're actually using some of our translational controls for attitude control, and in the wrong way. We're actually using our rear four thrusters for our RCS 4 thrusters for attitude control, when they're actually for fore and aft translation, because we don't have the 4 thrusters for the RCS to counteract them for fore and aft translation, so they're actually not useful for us anymore. So anyway, we fire around a lot, and thank goodness there are not crew on this craft, because they'd have been bored senseless with this process. This took quite a while. You can see they're just bringing ourselves in, and we actually, for a craft that's limited in its viability, shall we say, it doesn't do too badly. We actually managed to get within about 20 meters, and you'll see there we're getting closer and closer. We're careful, we don't really want to touch Puck 2, because Puck is still actually a usable scientific craft at the moment. It's actually the one of the two of these that's got the longer life expectancy. It's going to be up there for a while doing some science for us. So it's we hold station quite nicely. We're not going to try and get too close to it, because again, Puck is doing stuff that we want it to do. We don't want to get too close, but we've shown we can actually get nearby, and we can hold as best we can like this, and that's not a problem. But anyway, once that's done, it's all about returning to Earth. Well, we're not returning to Earth because this thing doesn't have a heat shield. That's right, we didn't, number one, we didn't install a heat shield, and number two, we don't actually have the heat shield for it yet anyway. We're still finishing off our research, but there we go. So we're testing the detachment of that service component, that service compartment, that service module. That detaches, and that's going to obviously re-enter as well. It's just going to go later on, it's going to re-enter, and then this craft is not planning to stay around. We're just going to let it drop through the atmosphere, and that is going to be the end of it pretty much. It will burn up hopefully on re-entry. It would be nice to see where it gets to in re-entry for the level of heating with those tanks. Again, these are just standard tanks. We've got some service modules on the top there. This is pretty much the dumb weight, so if it makes a decent orientation of itself, it'd be interesting to see what it actually does. But while that destroys itself, on to our next mission. So this is the 11th of May 1963. We're moving through 1963, and we're sending up the first of 2 Jupiter probes, and these are going to use technology that was pretty much developed on Puck 2, and it will also require that we upgrade our communication systems at Earth significantly before they reach Jupiter. So they will have the ability to communicate with us directly from Jupiter only if we get a big enough receiver on Earth. That's what's holding us up at the moment. So we need to upgrade our Earth-based systems, but we want to set these off first while we do that work. And you will see they've got the thermo-generated power coming in the same way that Puck was testing. We've got solar panels on that little stage that goes into parking orbit, primarily because we had those sections designed. So that departure stage is one that we've designed before, we've used before. You saw it on the Cirrus and the Vesta probes. We've actually taken an extra segment and added it into their extra fuel segment. But this craft is, you've seen before, that section's new. This is the Jackal craft, so this is going to be the Jackal, and the other one will be the Jaguar, obviously J for Jupiter. And so we're gonna leave this in orbit. We do have a problem with the fairing separation when this thing went up, and so we are going to actually have to check that everything is working on it, which is a concern for us. But we have that backup craft. The Jaguar will come up and join it, which is great. So while this thing floats around the Earth waiting for the right time to fire its engines up and head off to Jupiter, until next time, have a great one.